I want to share a pretty profound moment in my life that made me realize how important it is for me to heal myself. Because, especially as a codependent, he used to be so focused on what everyone else is doing. What do they need? How can I help them? Help them, which is all BS because it usually is enabling. Not at all helpful. And a lot of times my motives were rooted in trauma and delusion and all kinds of stuff. So one of the people in my family that I'm closest to, I realized that her healing started the moment she didn't have, real healing, deep healing, started the moment she got to stop worrying about me dying. I did not realize that this particular family member hinged so much of her life on my well-being. She knew that I had been abused by a family member. She saw herself as a protector of me. And, once we went our separate ways, I went to Montana, then New York, then California, and lived in my truck for 5 years doing crazy, dangerous jobs, just moved all over. I've lived in so many places, y'all. And then I, lived all over South America for a little bit, working on a farm, strawberry farm, hitchhiking, climbing in Patagonia, teaching English in Chile, just wandering. And she knew something that I didn't know, is that I trust men who are not trustworthy. And that I get preyed upon a lot. This is the stuff that I'm actually unpacking and really healing from right now in terms of deep trauma and, with EMDR and all that stuff. Fun stuff, y'all, fun stuff. Anyway, she has been trying her whole life to move on and not be so worried about me, right? Because that's what happens in family systems, is that when they, kids end up protecting each other the way their parents are supposed to be protecting them. That we get parentified and we take on these roles that no child should be asked to do. And hers was the protector, my protector, which also caused a lot of resentment because that no child should have to do that. And yet she loved me so much that she almost became like a surrogate mother figure in certain times, like when we were in certain situations, and that carried on into our adulthood. So when I got married at the age of 42, and she met Anthony face to face and got to spend some time with him. Before we parted ways and got on the plane, she hugged him and was just like, I feel like my sister's going to be okay now. Now, not in a way that's like, oh, a man's going to protect you, but more in a way like she was so happy. Especially, it's not easy being related to me, y'all. I write about schmegs with strangers on the internet. That's what I wrote about going to, schmegs clubs, about hooking up with 8 dudes in 9 days on the French Riviera. I write about stuff that nobody ever wants to read about their family member, right? And she usually didn't read it because she couldn't handle worrying about me. And so it's like she always worried about me when I was working dangerous jobs, when I was a climber, when I was a raft guide. She always worried about me because she just knew that men would prey on me because I was easy prey. That's not her words. Those are my words. Because it's a trauma response. I trusted nasty, creepy old men all the time because they seem familiar. They seemed like home. So I think she told me this when we got home from our honeymoon. Our honeymoon was like, meet Melanie's husband tour all over the U.S. And so all my closest friends in all these different states and my family, in multiple places met him. And of course they love him. And so when we got back from that trip, she said, after you left with Anthony, that's the first time I felt like I could breathe. That's the first time I didn't think to myself, maybe that's the last time I'm going to see her. That's the first time I didn't wonder, is that the last hug I'm going to give Melanie? I was shocked. I was like, really? You've been thinking that every time we part? Because I'm just like, bye. had no idea that she worried about me so much because she knew something about my past that I didn't even know. I didn't even understand, and just till the last few years, now that I'm in a very safe relationship where I'm allowed to process stuff, and I get triggered a lot, and I have someone who is very comfortable with my anger and actually helps me get in touch with my anger. Anthony's great at that. He's like, validates my anger and holds space for it and literally holds me when I'm, right? So much stuff has come up since being with him. And so she actually, kind of understood me and my past more than I did. Even though I've been working so hard to heal this stuff for a really long time, I didn't really realize till recently just how, and I'm going to talk about this more soon, just how many absolutely ridiculous situations I've been in. Traveling, living in my truck, being stalked, like not just like, oh my God, but more like, holy crap, the details of that. Like the man who stalked me from Wyoming to New Mexico and told me he had a diamond mine and he was going to buy me a new truck and whatever. And he was this nasty old hitchhiker who slept in my truck with me. Anyway, I have so many stories that I really want to dive into because I don't want y'all to think that I'm just like, this is like confident feminist. No, I've learned all this crap through so much pain and a lot of work on myself. And I'm still learning so much and unpacking so much. But one of the big lessons I got from this was that I've always, known that this family member had a lot of their own trauma to deal with, but I had no idea that a lot of her trauma, there was no space for it. That it was in a holding pattern because she was so worried about losing me. And now that I look back on my life, and especially like the more I tell these stories, I'm like, I can't believe this happened. Like I was just like, la, 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 next adventure. And so once she didn't have to worry about me, all of her stuff came up. Memories, like memories and like body memories and like all of the stuff that she's been needing to process, there was no room for it. And I think it's because she just didn't have that. The same way I didn't have safety to process relational trauma until I was in a healthy relationship. She didn't have a safe place to process a lot of her trauma until this thing that really kept her, on edge all the time, worrying about Melanie dying. And if you've heard any of my stories, it's very hard to be a family member of mine. Everybody's always like, God, you have like not 9 lives, but like 900 lives. I've been in a steam pipe explosion in New York. Like I have so many stories. My problem on this app is I don't even know how to tell them all because there's so many. And a lot of them are just like, holy crap, how are you alive? Imagine being related to that. And now that she's not worried and she also was very traumatized by me being in that domestic violence relationship. What is in my hair? Oh my God. Ugh. That scarred her so much. She had to go and do some serious therapy from the secondhand abuse of me. Do you know, or whatever you call it, And once I worked so hard to not repeat this pattern, to break the generational cycle, generational trauma, break the cycle of violence, especially of schmegdual violence in my family. And I've worked so hard at it. And now she has space to heal her own. And it's amazing. And we are so close now. We've always loved each other so much, but there was this thing in the way. And, part of it was her trauma, part of it was my trauma. But it was this thing we didn't talk about because we didn't know what it was. We couldn't name it, but there was something that kind of that was in the way of us having a real deep, I can tell you anything relation instead of like some sort of like mother-daughter, like weird parentified family system crap. I don't know. I don't know if anyone cares. I'm just told the longest story ever. The point of it is, part of the things about codependency is realizing you can't change anyone else. It's not your job. Your job is to do everything you can to heal your own trauma. And in doing that, it will set in motion change. It may not be what you want. It may not be how you want it, but things cannot stay the same in your family if you heal. So focus on yourself and trust the process.